This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice.
A little bit
the views
culty.
And opinions expressed
Navigating
do not necessarily
cult,
reflect
control,
the official
and
policy
coercion.
or position of the podcast.
Written by Sarah
and are not
Edmondson
intended to
and
malign
Nippy
any
Ames.
religion, group,
Narrated
club, organization,
by Sarah
business,
Edmondson
individual,
and Nippy
anyone,
Ames.
or anything.
I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony Nippy Ames, and this is A Little Bit Culty.
We woke up from a cult, and that journey was captured in The Vow on HBO and in my memoir, Scarred.
Now, in this podcast,
Thank
we break
you
down
for listening
shame
to A
and
Little Bit
secrets that make these
Culty, navigating
experiences so
cult,
destructive with
control,
honest
and
conversations on
coercion.
how seemingly benign
Written by
groups
Sarah
can cross into the
Edmondson and
cultiverse,
Nippy Ames.
and how to spot
Narrated
and recover from trouble
by Sarah
if it happens to
Edmondson
you.
and
Each
Nippy
week,
Ames. We bring in experts, survivors, and whistleblowers to explore red flags, resilience, and even share a few laughs, because sometimes you gotta laugh.
Subscribe to our Patreon for early and ad-free listening, some live Q&A, and exclusive content at patreon.com/alittlebitculty.
Welcome to Season 8 of A Little Bit Culty.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, hanging on to it, my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave.
Welcome back to A Little Bit Culty, everyone. We have quite the episode for you.
Long time coming. Today's amazing guest grew up inside a movement that from the outside looked like faith and maybe some discipline, but behind the scenes told a very different story. Michael Shamblin Black is a former leader of the Remnant Fellowship Church, the controversial religious group founded by his mother, yes, the one with the big hair, Gwen Shamblin Lara. Have you seen The Way Down on HBO? This is a fabulous documentary which will give you lots of context for this interview. Highly recommend.
For years, Michael watched and quietly documented what he now describes as deeply troubling teachings, control, and abuse within the church's inner circle. After Gwen's death in a 2021 plane crash that also killed several top leaders, Michael made the decision to leave the organization he'd been part of since its founding and to start speaking out.
In this conversation, we're digging into what really was happening inside Remnant, where the church stands today under new leadership, including his own sister, and what it takes to walk away from not just a belief system, but a family legacy. This is a story about power, loyalty, and what happens when you decide to tell the truth anyway.
It's also a story about persevering, surviving, leaning into the growth. And I wrote this in the book that we gave to Michael. It's that we're very proud of him. So, Mike, we're proud of you and the work that you've done. Here's our episode with Michael Shamblin Black.
Part 1, and please do stay for Part 2. We cover a lot of ground, and you're not going to want to miss it. Michael Shamblin Black, this has been, I think, 5 or 6 years in the making since we at least knew about you. And then
saw him at CrimeCon, so that would have been what?
3 years ago.
3 years ago?
We met at CrimeCon. And we've been in touch.
And shout out to Ken Bernstein for introducing me to you both. I remember showing up there and
that's right.
So many people at that CrimeCon at Opry Mills, and y'all just had these massive mobs of crowds watching y'all's live podcast. That was a big experience for me. It was really cool.
Oh, with Mike King.
Yeah, I got to sit in the live. Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mike.
And that was kind of was that your first time sort of being out and about in public in Nashville?
For a long time. Mm-hmm. And I credit Ken for kind of just pulling me out, getting me to go over there and then getting to meet y'all. And that was just so amazing. So cool.
Ken's good like that.
Ken is good. Just like, Ken's like, just come with me. Let's just do this. Which, given everything you've gone through, that took some trust to go with almost a stranger. Well,
right.
Ken has a way.
Ken has a way. Big shout out to Ken Bernstein. He's a big advocate, supporter of ours. We can't thank him enough. I'm really glad he brought you out there. So between then and now, let's just start with right now.
He's our Nashville Connect.
Yeah, he's our Nashville Connect.
Yeah.
How are you doing right now? We haven't talked. We've texted since then, but we haven't really talked. How are you? How's your well-being?
Well, how am I doing? It's complicated, but maybe it's not too complicated. I feel like I'm still, emotionally, I'm making it. I'm not going to say I'm doing great, but, we can get to that. But I mean, how I'm doing is I'm still doing my social media, campaign against Remnant. And I am, still in that process of exposing the church. So it's hard to say as far as like, have I moved on or, I still have a lot of trust issues.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure y'all hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Because I'd been in churches my whole life and, way down in Remnant were my entire life. And I've seen a lot of questionable things from religious organizations. I'm trying to get over all that. And Remnant didn't believe in therapy. And I've been taking, therapy sessions with, I believe y'all know Dr. Laura. I believe Sarah, you were probably the one recommending her.
Has that been helpful?
It's been amazing. It's been amazing. I mean, Dr. Laura Anderson is, y'all know her. I mean, she's been in the high control, high demand religious environments. So, I mean, I feel like she's been truthfully able to kind of see how I've been affected, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's been awesome. And I feel like something like, I've told this to people, something like clarity maybe comes with every session. And when I feel a little bit off track, I feel like it's something that just hones me in on kind of where I need to be. Kind of a clarity of purpose, so to speak, with the sessions. And it's a little bit of a self-discovery. And Remnant, you weren't allowed to have therapy in Remnant. Your therapy was listening to Gwen's tapes. So that was the only therapy I'd had to that point. And I believe one of her goals, like we've talked about, is kind of something like for me to live my best life possible. I'm sure y'all hear that a lot. And I know that may sound confusing to some people that listen and know me because, I've said I'm still on this track of going right against Remnant. But, I will say the therapy, it's helping. It's hard to talk about everything with her. There's some things that are difficult to bring up. But anyway, it's good. She's amazing.
Great.
I'm so happy to hear that. And we'll talk more about your healing and religious trauma and all that maybe in part 2. And let's rewind a little bit. Obviously, we'll encourage people to watch the documentary. And I mean, assuming you think that it's accurate.
Well, it helps put this into context.
Yeah, just for some context.
It gives people a little refresher as to,
Well, Michael, we'll also record an introduction with some of the basics about Remnant and about Gwen and Joe and just sort of like an update in the introduction. And people want to know more about that story. They can watch the documentary. This is your story, okay? This is your journey in this podcast.
Okay.
So obviously you didn't choose to sign, you didn't sign up for the Remnant Church. You didn't, make the investment and buy some cassettes. You were born into it. And we'd love to just hear a little bit about your life and any memories that you want to share about your upbringing that, weren't in the documentary, because obviously a documentary can't capture what's not filmed. And even when it is filmed, they can edit it accordingly. What was life like with your mother, with Gwen?
Technically, I wasn't born into Remnant. But
right.
I did, I grew up, I had already always seen Gwen being this woman who she knew what the lead of God was from a very young age, however you want to frame that. I feel like my whole life, spent in some form of a church. And we were raised Church of Christ, which is a denomination in Christianity, very conservative denomination. And our house was very ultra-conservative type settings. We weren't allowed to watch the rated R movies. I had to go sneak to a friend's house to watch Terminator 2, stuff like that. Couldn't watch MTV.
That's my first red flag right there.
It's such a great movie, too.
It really is. I remember when it came out.
I like that red flag.
Yeah.
But, and our house was a lot of spiritual talk. My father he had gotten his master's of divinity, actually, from Harding Graduate School of Religion. So it's a very religious household. the environment was very, it was a daily type thing, talking about God. I do feel, though, even from a very early age, it was a bubble. Even the Church of Christ itself is a bubble. I mean, I'm not, y'all know all this stuff, but the Church of Christ itself is a bubble to the outside world. Remnant would be a bubble within a bubble. But, I'd say we were a little bit not having a clue how the world works in many ways. They were kind of shielding a lot. It was kind of a closed environment. And I've said this about Gwen before. I would put her in a category of helicopter parent. My father, David, he was always the one who, he was trying to get us out into the real world, I felt like. He was trying to be that grounding, that, realistic guy, and in which, unfortunately, in turn, later on, it gets twisted around by Gwen that he represented Satan. So she was constantly saying stuff like that to me and my sister when he would leave. She was bad-mouthing him all the time when he went off. But that was a stage. Gwen, I think most people will probably, wanting to know about Gwen. She was, if she had a humble state, that was it. In Memphis, we did not have a lot of money. Our family was in debt. By the time I was in 3rd or 4th grade, we were in a lot of debt. We lived in Midtown in Memphis, Tennessee. There was a lot of crime. Like, my bike was stolen 3 times, and our mower was stolen twice. And, every school I went to had bullet holes in every window. And so she would, that was the Way Down Workshop weight loss program. That was kind of the beginnings of that in Memphis in the 1980s. And she was, shopping at thrift stores for our clothes. But that's where it would all begin, in Memphis.
And you were how old when the Way Down started?
I was about 6 or 7.
Okay. So you can remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Did you feel like the documentary captured that part of her life accurately? Like, did that seem reflective of what it was like? I mean, it was always the different mom at home, of course, but like from what you saw?
Right. I feel like the documentary did an incredible job.
Great.
Marina and all of them, the director, Zinovich, I mean, they did an amazing job. And they put a lot of work into that. And it was accurate. There are things in the documentary, however, that there's no way they would have known based off a lot of the people, because, and some of this is my opinion. Some people may disagree with me on this, but I saw Gwen, even in the early stages, as there was some anti-male authority type thing going on. And this plays into kind of later on, I'll explain, but in Churches of Christ, like every church we went to, from a very young age, she's always causing issues in these churches that we go to. And I don't think that's probably known by a lot of public. She would be speaking out in classes. I would hear these things from my dad, and they would always be it was difficult for him because, she's talking over the elders or people. They'll say, does somebody have a comment in a big, large adult class at a church? And she's going to want to get up and speak, and she's going to want to teach. And in those days in the Church of Christ, that was not exactly normal. It's probably not a big deal now. And she would be supporting women teachers a lot. And she just had this way of living that it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So there was always be like some sort of wake of people behind her that everywhere we went that had not great memories of her, or she could rub people the wrong way.
Right. She's type A, for sure. That's
right.
understandable.
Type A narcissist.
Plus.
Yeah. Type A hole. But she...
That's the soundbite right there.
Finish the sentence.
But it's kind of my understanding from everything I ever saw. She had never been, you talk about authority or patriarchy, all of these things. She had never been under authority of any man, if that makes sense. And it's hard to describe that, but there was no preacher, my father, a workplace, she had that within her from a very young age. And it was kind of her own, jealous or whatever you want to call it, wanting power her method of she wanted to kind of be on the giving end of abuse in a lot of ways. And she always felt like that she was enslaved wherever she was. And I think people see that theme. I don't think a lot of people know where that theme came from, the Exodus out of Egypt in Way Down Workshop. The whole theme was the Israelites leaving the slavery of Egypt.
And the Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And God leading them out. But if you really look at it, her whole life was getting out of the slavery of dieting. I think that was on her Way Down Diet book, like slogan. She was enslaved by male authority in churches. The whole thing was always breaking those chains, getting out.
Before we hear from our sponsors, just a quick reminder. Our book, A Little Bit Culty, Navigating Cults, Control, and Coercion, is officially out and available on Amazon.
Signed pre-orders have closed, but you can still get your copy today. This book is the culmination of 5 years of conversations, interviews, and research. Everything we've learned about how people get pulled into high-control groups and how to avoid, escape, or heal from them.
If you've been listening to the podcast and want a deeper go-to resource, this is it.
Available now on Amazon in print and as an ebook for Kindle. And yes, the audiobook is coming soon, narrated by us.
Just search A Little Bit Culty and grab your copy. Do it.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for listening. Now, let's dive back into the Cultiverse.
Were those changes real, imagined, or do you think she created the dynamic so that gave her kind of a victim-perpetrator narrative that she could maybe leverage as a means of power? Or
I do believe some of it's real.
Because a woman...
Because that is the structure, right?
Well, because being a woman not under male authority isn't a negative concept necessarily. Do you know what I mean?
That's exactly
Disrespecting
right.
men for just being men is where it becomes problematic, but I don't think that...
Right,
I guess where did she twist it, and where was her...
Where did she twist it? It was in Remnant Fellowship. I've listened to the other podcast y'all did with one of the ex-members, Gina, but they're talking about, the submission part of Remnant, women being in submission to men. And keep in mind, I don't have a problem with women, the equality type part of that. That's not my...
It sounds like that's what she's leveraging, the narrative, right?
It was a very deep part of her.
Yeah.
Okay. So in Way Down in the early stages of Remnant, she loves to share how under authority she is. She loved to talk about how submissive with all things. It was submission to God. She's submissive to her husband. The entire program was based on basically her giving up her will. One of the foundational verses of Remnant, which was in Way Down too, Jesus talking about, the world must learn I love the Father and do exactly what, he commands. Jesus submitting his will to God. And that was the foundation, and how we are all supposed to be submissive. The submissive wife was an example to honor God. We're supposed to be submissive to God. But there's lying throughout all of her videos. It's sprinkled everywhere because the submission, she sprinkles through all of these Way Down talks, all of her live talks, how women should no longer be enslaved with men preachers. It was mainly men church leaders, okay? But with her, it carried over to everything. But she was with her, it ended up being husbands, men, anything. But the start is mainly male church authorities. So throughout all the teachings, it's how women are supposed to be finding their own lead, not to be enslaved from these preachers. or these church authorities, which just happened to be a lot of the churches in the 80s and 90s. It was still a lot of male leaders.
Well, it's still today, isn't it? Mostly.
I'm sure it is, but then it was even more. It was very unusual for a woman to be a leader of a church. You just didn't see that. I mean, it's there. I'm sure it's out there, but in the 80s. But so she was saying that through the teachings, because she was saying the men are leading y'all astray. And she called it mixing the message. Like the men, she was teaching the women how to do it right. The men were giving the women permission to do it wrong. And basically her message was anti-authority in itself and way down. She would say things like the wife's supposed to be submissive to the husband. She would claim the husbands and men are supposed to be the heads of the church. Keep in mind, we're still talking about Christian patriarchy here, however people view that. And
well, yeah, I was going to say there's no other structure out there that reinforces that dynamic of subservient women to men, right, in our culture than the Christian patriarchy. Is that accurate?
Well, what do you mean? Describe that again.
The traditional male-female roles are generally reinforced by church dynamics, like a more submissive woman to a more, I guess, father figure. Sure. Right.
Certainly, right. Based off that patriarchal, Judeo-Christian system.
Yeah.
Right. And she's pushing back on that?
It was a women's experience, okay? It was body image, food, self-control, a lot of shame. It was a lot of areas where, and keep in mind, I'm not trying to go into like misogynistic type things here. I know it can sound like that, but
no. Anytime you talk about the differences of genders, you can risk that. But I think in this case, it's clear abuses of power, and putting language to the abuses of power is extremely valuable.
So in the Christian patriarchy, where the men are in charge and women are supposed to follow, it seemed like she was like, no, I'm not going to do that, and was pushing back on it and getting women to kind of question that, but then making them obedient to her. So it wasn't really that.
Mm-hmm.
She was attacking the power structure to take the power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like using the abuse of power to abuse her own power. Is that right?
That's exactly exactly right.
So you're not shitting on, just to be clear, if anyone's accusing you of this, because it sounds like you're sensitive to it, you're not shitting on women being equal. Right? You're not shitting on women.
Or attempting to gain power. That's not. Right. Yeah, no.
So that's I see what you're saying. That's a tricky area to discuss.
It's not the simplest thing either, but you're exactly right. She's setting up things in all of these programs so that, these women who way down is 98%, 99% women in the 80s, 90s. It's millions of women in churches. Just about all, most of them are in churches. She's setting things up so they can leave a situation that's mildly uncomfortable. She's paving the way for them. It's a form of anti-authority Christianity. And she's trying to guide them into remnant like a ship. Right. She's encouraging them to look for their own leads. So in churches, if there is this patriarchal system in a church, she's encouraging women to look for their own lead from God. Personally, bypassing the men, bypassing the preacher, and then it goes from just bypassing the preacher's lead from God to bypassing the church, their organization. That's the next step. And she starts calling all these churches counterfeits, because that's the primary way she's going to get her followers for a new church. They have to be bad for you to be good. I mean, I know y'all.
She's attacking her competition.
Did she have the long game? Like, do you think she had the long game? Like, I'm going to do this way down? Or did she start to gain success with the way down and realize that she could convert those people to followers? And then, like, how planned out was this? Do you think? It's hard to know, but what's your guess?
I'm not sure that she knew what it was going to turn into at the very beginning. I felt like, though, like I said earlier, I felt it was something ingrained inside of her.
I think that's probably it. I think when you grift, it's the grift that's around you. And then if your grift gains momentum, it can probably shift the grift to something else but it's always the same. Put me in a position of the sinner. And in doing so, she's attacking her competition by,
Yeah.
it's a tactic.
Meanwhile, what's life like for you? You're going to Church of Christ school, and then eventually she's like, now we're going to start our own.
Right. But when Remnant started, I was graduating high school. So
Right.
I never experienced, I did go to a private Christian high school, David Lipscomb in Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
I never fully experienced the amount of hate that came. Once word got out that she started her own church, it was like massive, we called it in Remnant persecution.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But that was a big roller coaster, but that was not till I got out of high school, started college.
Okay. So what do people not know? Like, you lived this, assuming you lived with her. What happened to your dad, by the way? Your parents got divorced?
Yeah, that's right. They divorced 2018. And then after that, 2021, after the plane crash, I leave Remnant in 2021. And then I get to finally spend a couple of years with him, which was great. I had always had a lot of respect for him, but then we went to lunch every single day. Unfortunately, he kind of became my my only friend at that point. But then he gets pancreatic cancer and passed away.
Oh,
so
man.
just a year later, basically.
Oh, Michael.
So
Jesus.
I was like caring for him the whole time too, and watching him waste away. He lost like
Shit.
160 pounds. It was,
Fuck.
it's never fun. Cancer's not fun.
You've been through it. You've just God, one thing after
Jesus.
another.
What year did he die?
A year after the prayer.
2023.
Jesus.
In fact, this month, he died tomorrow. Tomorrow is the 3-year, May 19th.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Jesus. How did
But at least I got to have,
Yeah.
I got to have some
Some
good.
closure.
Yeah.
That's right. Closure.
Did he fill in some gaps for you of what happened from his perspective?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. We talked about it every day. He unfortunately had not seen a lot of the inside terrible stuff about Remnant that I had seen. Like, when I started exposing all that stuff with Phil Williams, the guidance system and all that stuff, he didn't know about all that stuff. But he was, he had known Gwen, though, for longer than anybody. So he would talk about how Gwen was in college and things of that nature.
What was his diagnosis? What did he say? Was he as blindsided by it as everyone else? Did he see it happen gradually? What was his take?
I remember him talking to me about when Remnant first started. He actually was a part of Remnant, keep in mind, for the first 8 months of Remnant. And then he backs out. Because Gwen being the leader, the preacher, she's the judge, jury, and executioner. It was just too much for him. He was trying to make it work, and it just didn't work. It was super awkward. And because she's sitting there on stage saying women should be submissive to men, and yet he has to do what she says.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird. And he also saw the praise part get to her. He saw the Gwen before she got big. A lot of this is like the same. It's like the Hollywood story of somebody being a nobody, and then they get lifted up and they're famous, and then they get arrogant, and their friends, somebody says, "Hey, you're not the same person anymore." And, we've all seen those movies, right?
That's true.
It's kind of a cliche, isn't it?
Is.
With a little extra hair.
Right.
Poof.
But that was her.
Yeah.
Her high heels got too high. She was. I would always make this in my journal. Like it was like Icarus, Greek mythology, and his father Daedalus is warning him. Make some of these wings, but don't fly too close to the sun, because his wings are made with wax, and he gets too high, and the sun melts the wax, and he falls to the earth. She had her wings, and she went a little too high.
Yeah.
Burned her hair, probably too.
Yes. Wings
Set
and
it
hair.
on fire.
Singed.
Or fire.
What was it like for you? When did you, what was your own journey? You're in the documentary, we see you as, playing your music and that you're super talented and, you're leading these things.
That's debatable.
Okay, well, I'm saying you're super talented, and I spoke to God and
Why,
God and
thank
I
you,
agreed.
Sarah.
But what was when did you start to have doubts? Do you have any particular moments where you started to question things, and can you remember some of them?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, there's all kinds of things. As far as you're talking about when I started seeing issues, things like that.
Yeah, it could be before Remnant, during Remnant. Tell us some stories that of your own inner struggles.
Something that I don't think has come out a lot is when Remnant started in the late 1990s. I was doing music, and I had some albums, and I started getting to record. And Gwen's at the height of her popularity there, 1997, 1998, 1999. And her books are selling everywhere. They're in all the stores, the Lifeway Christian stores. I was at that point pursuing Christian music professionally at that point. I actually had a development deal it's a label called Rocket Town Records. It was Don Donahue who was the head of it at the time. And they brought in this big producer from LA. His name was Monroe Jones, and he was going to produce me. He came to Ashlawn, which was the house we all lived in, to listen to me play music. And I was going to get a 3-song deal for radio, Christian radio. And so, right as that's happening, so I'm getting out of high school and getting this opportunity, Remnant starts, and then there's the immediate backlash. Gwen had a book deal with Thomas Nelson for her second book. They cancel her book. She was going to be on a 52-city book tour on a private jet. Thomas Nelson cancels it. The churches start dropping way down programs. The Christian conferences start distancing themselves from us. And then they call up, and I get the call from David Martin. Gwen sends David Martin in to tell me. And they're like, sorry, your deal's done. So it ended before it even started.
Sorry, remind us who David Martin is.
So David Martin was her right-hand guy.
Yeah.
He was one of the leaders that died on the plane crash as well. He was the worship leader, David Martin. Me and him were worship leaders.
And they told you it died because not died. So the deal died.
So they backed out because all of the Christian businesses backed out of Way Down. So they said my music deal was canceled immediately.
Damn.
The producers, they all pulled out. So as soon as I got the opportunity to have a music deal, that was going to be my life, Christian music. I was going to be on the radio, be in the studios and do all that. Because Way Down also had a humongous audience, keep in mind. It's not because I was so talented, it's because Way Down had a built-in audience.
Let's take a little break from the Cultiverse. Here's a word from our sponsors. Thank you, sponsors. We couldn't do it without you. Now let's get back to the show. And the Christians were separating from the Way Down because this is when she introduced that she wasn't supportive of the Trinity, or what was that? Is that why they were all changing?
It was the Trinity and her starting her own church.
I see. Okay, so
when she announces that she's starting the Remnant Fellowship.
Okay.
But
so she went a little too far with her.
Yeah, and
right.
One thing we rewatched the doc just because it's been a while, and I had forgotten that even the word remnant implies one true church. It's the only one. And as you know now from doing your cult recovery work and reading our book, that every culty church, not all churches, but the culty ones, say that they're the one true church. It's the only way.
Right.
And that's a big red flag.
They've always, what Remnant is so funny about is that they say something and they'll take it back and say, we didn't say that. They do that more than anybody on the planet.
Does it drive you nuts?
They rescind their claims. Yes, it drives me nuts.
I imagine.
Do I not look crazy? But they've always stated that they're the first people to know the real truth of the Bible.
Right.
And I'm like, has anybody been to a library or something? They don't there's been countless Christian groups that have gone before Remnant. And that was something I used to warn Gwen. And I wouldn't warn her. I would say things just to make people think. I'd be like, y'all do realize there's been tens of thousands of Christian movements since the time of after, Christ that have come and gone before us, and they really felt like they were on the track, and then they lost their supposedly righteous direction. And even that context, they didn't want to hear that. They didn't want to think that this could have happened before, that there's other people. They wanted to feel like they're the only ones. And Remnant, they lose their, they build their legalistic groundwork, and it's the Church of Thin, right? And it's for people who want to worship Gwen Shamblin at this point. And it's people that love to be on camera. It was all about appearances. It was a skin-deep religion.
Right.
It was an appearance-driven religion. A surface-only, the services were, I used to call the sanctuary, I called it the studio. It wasn't the sanctuary. Because there's so many cameras and staging and how it's put together. It's not a sanctuary, it's a studio. It's an appearance-driven church. And it turned everybody sitting in that building into the same thing. It turned everybody into shallow. It turned everybody into surface. I'm not saying everybody, but you know what I mean. Remnant weight was the number one sin, overeating. And so that's the foremost barometer of sin. And so, don't let yourself get too large if you want to stay in this church of all these women spies watching and controlling you. It's your size, your weight. It's how you dress, your clothing. It's getting approval from your peers and leaders. It's a lot of cliques. It's a lot of parties. It's closer to a women's sorority or something than it is a church. But that was Remnant. It was a lot of that.
Where is it now? What is the state of the church now?
I would say they're not doing great. It's basically kind of become like they've been seriously hurt, I believe, from all of the things that have been exposing it. If I had to guess.
The documentary,
right.
Right.
That did not help them at all. The plane crash didn't help them at all.
No.
I mean, when the plane crash first happens, you think about that 7 leaders. I used to think corporations don't last if they lose 7 of their top leaders in one day. That's why you don't put, all your generals on the same plane in the army. The president and the vice president never fly on the same plane for that very reason.
Or at the same time, yeah.
At the same time, yeah. So that damaged Remnant, and then the documentary is damaging all of these things that have come out, exposing. I've been fortunate enough to be able to put a lot of stuff on social media. I've had a lot of sources sending me things that I could put out, further exposing them, and then had the Phil Williams interview. And there's other people doing interviews as well. You've got the Gina Wilson that was on y'all's podcast, which that was excellent, by the way. I've listened to that probably like 30 times.
Really? 30
Well,
times?
I am obsessed with this, Sarah. I'm obsessed with Remnant. That was an excellent interview.
Thank you
And
so
shout
much
out
for
to
saying
Gina,
that.
by the way.
Shout out to Gina, and that reminds me we have to send her a copy of the book because she's in it. Have you got to that part in the book where we talk about?
Yes, I want to say I've read I'm doing my best. It's a lot in that book.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's almost, I almost want to say the word is like, it's overwhelming in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's awesome. I love that y'all have like a cheat sheet on every chapter, and it's a lot of people's stories from the people that you've had on your podcast. And it's almost overwhelming because it's like I identify with a lot of y'all's experience so much, and it's not a very common experience for me to see that. And there's so many good points in it. It's going to be one of those things I'm going to have to read over and over. It's like a manual.
Yeah, it's a manual.
We
You
want
nailed
it to be a manual.
That's what we want it to be.
A handbook for survivors.
That's the best endorsement.
It's good.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
There is a little something in there about you without mentioning your name. You'll recognize it when you get to it because you're not done yet, right? It's in the healing section.
Ah.
So,
Healing.
Yeah. You're not there
My
yet.
favorite word. How did you know?
When you read it, you'll be like, oh, that's me. We changed it so it wasn't so that it, and by the way, if you read it and you decide you don't want us to include it, I think you'll be fine with it because it was really.
I'm not going to make y'all republish your book.
Well, it was basically us saying to you when we met you at CrimeCon, because you were debating whether, what to do. And I said, just focus on your healing as if it's your job,
Right.
something like that.
I still remember what Nippy said too. I mean, that was such a big moment for me.
What did Nippy say?
Nippy, I remember you said, Nippy, you said something like, getting myself right, physically getting your mind in the right place, like before you start. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it was kind of just getting my, work on yourself, basically. And it takes time, get yourself, and it was a health, version of healing. And then, it takes years to start speaking. I mean, you should reset. You can say it better than me, but
I probably said something to the effect of putting language to what happened to you is the best way to heal, I think. And I wouldn't start speaking about it. I mean, you can still speak about it, but don't do anything that's going to make you leave your comfort zone.
Take care of yourself first.
And
yes. Okay, yes.
You have no obligation to do that, and you can stop a conversation whenever you feel like it, and make sure you've put language to what happened. And if you get to a point where you don't, you can just say, "Listen, this is where I tap out." And it's a constant thing of putting language to it. And also, you have to understand. I guess speak for Sarah a little bit here, but I was pretty peripheral to a lot of the abuse. You were ground zero in your situation in the abuse. You were in the crossfire every day. You were in it physically every day. I was peripheral, and I lived in another city part of the time. So while it's the same, it's to the extent to which I got it and is a fraction of yours, but the language is the same because the pattern recognition is identical. So for me, I wasn't dealing with the trauma, years of trauma that you had. In fact, I didn't get into take this training until I was 26, 27. So I had a kind of sense of the world myself before I got in it, and I had a lot to compare it to, but the pattern recognition and the coercive aspects of it are identical. And so putting language to what happened to me sent me down a rabbit hole of every time I have a conversation with someone, it's the pattern is exactly the same. The degree of trauma in each person is different, if that makes sense, right? So it's case by case. So I'm not saying what was good for me is going to be good for you. I can say putting language to it is the start, and then turning it into wisdom and content for others to help them is is an option for you, which, as I understand, is a lot of what you're doing. At least in terms of putting language to what Remnant does, and what Remnant did was probably a more drastic degree.
It's also physical violence involved.
Yeah.
Which we haven't even talked about.
Right. I mean, being branded as physical violence.
Yeah. That's true. That just came at the end. It just came in the last few months.
Well, that's good. That's really good stuff. The pattern, the pattern. Once you figure it out, it can be applied to other things.
It's identical.
And then also you don't feel as alone, which I think is what may have been also powerful for you when we met 3 years ago, is that,
Well, it just seems like what you're saying. I mean, you'll have the techniques, if you will.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be applied to anybody. It doesn't matter how severe. It doesn't matter how big severe something is. It makes total sense.
Okay, everybody, let's take a pause there. We're going to come back for part 2 on Thursday, where we hear how Michael eventually decided to leave, what that was like for him, what he's been doing since, his healing journey, how he's been trying to shine a light on the church, get information, wake people up, and we'll hear more about his insights on his journey in level 2. So it's like Nexium curriculum in part 2 with Michael.
Level 2.
Level 2.
Gets
Don't
more
buy
serious.
now. Level 2. Okay, be right back.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, hanging on to the weight of my love.
We hope you're enjoying A Little Bit Culty. If so, please do show us some love. Drop a rating or leave a review. Hit subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/alittlebitculty.
Even better, send this episode to someone who needs it. Maybe they're in a cult. Maybe they're just a little bit susceptible. Or maybe they just love a good story. Spread the word, spread the love. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production.
Executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames in collaboration with producer Will Rutherford at Citizens of Sound. Our co-creator is Jess Temple Tardy.
Our production coordinator is Leslie Dinsmore.
Writing by Sandra Namoto and social media marketing by Eric Swarzinski and Brooke Keene.
Our theme song, Cultivated, is by the artists John Bryant and Nigel Aslan.